In one sense, this is a popular topic, or it's a topic in demand. And I'll tell a little story. Once upon a time, I was visiting in China. One of the cities I was visiting in China is Kunming. Kunming is the headquarters of China Eastern Airlines. China Eastern Airlines in China is like Delta and United and American Airlines, that kind of caliber. So it's like one of the major airlines in China, and their headquarters is in Kunming. And the person who was the organizer of the event was an officer, like part of the administration of China Eastern Airlines. And towards the event was at a yoga studio. I don't remember what the topic was at the yoga studio. It was something. And this was the presentation. And in the course of the presentation, the person who was the organizer leaned over and said, I just want to share something with you. Just this morning, from the 7th story office building of our headquarters, somebody committed suicide. They jumped from the window or the rooftop of the 7th story and flattered on the sidewalk. And as soon as the word got out, immediately there was a mandate by the officers of that organization. Everybody that's in the administration of China Eastern Airlines must take a meditation course, because the implication was they understood that one of the things that helps mitigate or diminish negative emotions is meditation. So in case some of you are stressed out with school or whatever, meditation is a good thing to consider. So the best way to overcome negative emotions is to not have any. And meditation helps you get there. But in case you have, then there's a matter of overcoming that influence. So that's the topic, overcoming negative emotions. What is negative emotion? What's that entity? And the role of mantra meditation to assist in overcoming negative emotion. So in life, you have to have some kind of a plan. So this is a little photograph of a fellow who read in the newspaper that tomorrow is going to be a nice sunny day, and so he decided to take a walk on the boardwalk on a nice sunny day. And sure enough, it rained, because that wasn't the plan, but it rained. So he found a place that had umbrellas for sale, so he went for a walk anyways on the boardwalk. And life is like that. We have an idea, and we pursue an idea and develop the idea, and life goes on. But then there's always challenges that doesn't match what the plan is. Financial, relational, occupational, physical, social, cultural challenges. And then how we address ourselves, besides the nice plan, how we address ourselves to the challenges that are obstacles in fulfilling that plan tells a lot about what our emotional life is. And sometimes those emotions seem to be very formidable, like we're going to get whooped by the opposition. And when facing that kind of a circumstance, there can be a very strong reaction to the circumstance. And the reaction to the circumstance is the disempowering, if it goes in the negative emotion space. there's a fellow who is in jail, or at least he feels that he's in jail because of his negative emotions, and he feels disempowered by the circumstance that created those negative emotions. There are many people that are involved in this in a professional way. Here's one. Dorothy Rowe states, depression is a prison where you are both the suffering prisoner and the cruel jailer, meaning you can put yourself in jail or you can get yourself out of jail. You have the key. The key can put yourself in that negative emotion space, or you don't have to stay in that negative emotion space or feel jailed by the circumstance and the emotion that's generated by the circumstance. You can free yourself from that from the circumstance, and certainly from the emotion. A very popular person during a certain period of my youth in history, Nelson Mandela. You all know Nelson Mandela. He was kind of a target for the apartheid movement, the freeing the black population from slavery or oppression. And because he was the kind of person that he was made a target. He was put in jail. And the jail that he was put in was an island outside of South Africa. And for 27 years, he was in prison. I mean, it wasn't just a metaphorical one, it was a prison. And the way that he was engaged was meant to break his spirit. So he and the other inmates in that prison were taken each day from their cell to the seashore. And by the seashore, they were given a hammer and some rocks, and their service was to smash the rocks into powder, and at the end of the day, throw the powder into the sea and go back into their jail cell. Meaningless labor. Purposefully meaningless labor every day, every day, every day for 27 years. And at the end of 27 years, he was released. So here's a statement that he made. As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave behind my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. Now, what happened, one of the things that happened during this 27 years is one of the fellows that was also put in jail was an Indian man, and the Indian man happened to have his own little copy of Bhagavad Gita. So the Indian man shared with Nelson Mandela his Bhagavad Gita. They read Bhagavad Gita and discussed Bhagavad Gita, and you may or may not know this, but he afterwards, during these senior years of his life, he became a very strong advocate of Bhagavad Gita. He propagated it and promoted it because it gave him strength. And the lesson was the lesson of forgiveness. It doesn't mean that the behavior of what they did with him or to him was okay, but how to let go of that hurt and, the ill will, the animosity towards those that subjected him to that humiliation for so long, 27 years, the prime of his life. We may not be in the Nelson Mandela bracket of difficulties, but we've all experienced various degrees of negative emotions and a whole range of them, without exception. We all know what that is. It happens to all of us. Here's some little illustrations to show different types of negative emotion. Hopelessness, loneliness. Loneliness is a big one. And I came to find out that in the UK, loneliness became such a problem, they created a ministry for loneliness because it cost the government so much money to deal with that negative emotion of loneliness. So they made a ministry, a proactive ministry to deal with it. And it's not a new thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the song, but the Beatles made a song on loneliness. Where have all the lonely people come from? Where do they all belong? Woo woo woo. It's a common feature, like water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. People feel lonely sometimes, even in crowds, where there's access to friendship, but they can't access it because they're stuck in that loneliness feeling or anger. Maybe you know some people that get triggered by anger. Or self-sabotage. This is a common one. I know several people. Self-sabotage means if there isn't a problem, you create one. Because there's a kind of adrenal rush to be in a danger situation, and then when the limb starts to crack, then you rush for the trunk of the tree because you want safety. And that rush, self-sabotage behavior is not so uncommon. Anxiety in general, resentment and blame. Any students here are psychology students? Major psychology? No. Okay. Here's a chart. Maslow and Hawkins both have written books on this topic. Notice in the lower left, there's shame and guilt. So that's a very dark, negative emotion. It's even lower than fear. Now this is measuring scale of consciousness, how they do this, the photons of light that come from a living person. When there's a range of photons, when there's more, that's higher consciousness. If there's less, it's lower consciousness. So when people are experiencing shame and guilt or fear, the photon, it's something you can physically measure. Here it gives some numbers. So going up the scale, love, I like the idea that gratitude is even higher than love. And then higher consciousness. So vibrational frequencies of consciousness, meditation helps bring one to this higher stage. Tests have been done to show. And the experience of higher emotions or happy emotions, we all know what those are. When you do something that's a kind of act of kindness for another person, you feel something. Or the principle of honesty. It may be difficult to be honest, but when you stand by truth and honesty, there's strength and there's a positive feeling that comes with it. Or helping others in one way or another way. It's kind of like a natural instinct of a human being. And on the other hand, when it's there's a good positive emotion. Or forgiveness, just like Nelson Mandela. It's a higher state of consciousness, and with that, a contentment or a peace, giving peace within oneself and towards others, or joy, or peace in general. So these are examples of positive emotion, because it's not only in the darker side. Now there's two sections of this little time together where it's interactive. So look around, find a person or two or three, and discuss the following. I was asked, the way that it works, for me at least, when I'm a speaker at a university, I'm asked, what are some topics you'd like to speak about? I give them 5, 6, 7, or 8. And then something comes back saying, this is the topic the group wants. So this is the topic you all wanted, or some of you wanted. So why are you here? I'll just share this. I before coming here to Houston, I was in Sri Lanka for 3 weeks. And many of you know what Sri Lanka means as far as Ramayana. It's the place where Sundarakanda takes place. 3 weeks discussing Sundarakanda with many people. And the first 7 days was the Chinese national holiday. They have, we have our Independence Day. And the day that Mao took over and made the Communist Party the central party of China, and whatever the other thing that was going on prior to that was kicked out, and they have their Independence Day. So they last for a whole week. In China, people are workaholics, but for 7 days they don't work for national holiday. So we had a little gathering, and we discussed Hanuman's journey across the sea and meeting the obstacles that he met, unexpected obstacles, and how he dealt with each of them, and so forth and so on. So something that I asked like 5 times, why are you here? I mean, it wasn't like challenging. It was, you get more out of having a sense of intention and purpose than just, being passive listener. So what's your purpose in participating in this discussion, asking for it and participating? Are there certain negative emotions that you experience that you wish to not experience, or positive emotions that you wish to access, that you wish you could access them more frequently? The idea here is to take a few minutes. This is your purpose in being here, and find somebody or a few somebodies, and you can have a little discussion. And I'm going to sit down and you do the talking.
Yell at us, just gonna break the silence, Yeah. Someone's. Yeah. You go. I'll get my phone. All the time negative. Silence first. Should we meditate? Or unless you guys are ready. I need more ways. With meditation, meditation is that state of calmness, keeping your mind at peace. Even when you're you can be that for 5 seconds, nowhere a random just yeah, just better than everything. But you guys are like was it about meditation? You listen to a bell ring, and feel like it fades off. That one's really hard to listen. Any thoughts, just wonderful. So it's something that you see if you get to wake up very early in the morning. You wake up very early, between 2 to 5 a.m. You go in and wake up. And it's very quiet around you naturally, but just because you're so early in the morning, you're just active. And because of that, it's not going to be random. So you have that memory. That's like the first thing my intention is for you. You're so committed and passionate. And I was curious to see what was up. For me, it was to see what was up and what made you so passionate about this. So it's interesting to see all the stuff, the meditation, right? Anger. Yeah, especially when things don't go my way. Like for example, my classes, I had but then, well, they changed it. They changed the entire course plans. Now we don't have midterms anymore. But I spent so much time studying. Life is always a series of open doors.
I spent so much time studying, but then they changed it, and now I feel like all my effort went to waste. But there's nothing I can do about it. So, but I can't help but feel like, I don't know, I feel bad that my effort went to waste. But I know that there's nothing I can do about it to convince my professor to like change it back. Well, you asked me first. Okay, you can feel free to go.
Closed doors open up.
Yeah. Isn't it nice to find like hey, man, I didn't realize you sent us, bro. I didn't say hi. I'm sorry.
I think the negative emotions from procrastination that I get after procrastinating.
Yeah.
I got an exam
Like-
tomorrow, I'm still here.
But if you don't know,
Not even,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
generally,
yeah. It's like, oh, like, I should have an exam tomorrow. Like,
what if they said
Did you do well? Did you do well in the interview? Yeah, I did well.
he's here, so he did well.
Yeah. Just at home crying about it, that's fair. With negative emotions you constantly have. A lot like you said, like the procrastination, the self-hate procrastination.
Yeah.
I think I get a lot of that too. Like I've had days where like the days just fly by because I did nothing. Like I watched videos on YouTube or something like that. And it's just like, wow, that was 24 hours I never got. Like that's just a waste.
I feel like frustration. Yeah, I'm just gonna balance your Have you guys heard of anxiety blindness?
What's that?
So essentially, you don't get to work.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting ready. Moving on. Next topic. This is a good question. Where did negative emotions come from? And people that study this or deal with those that are caught in negative emotions, they describe it's like a computer. And with a computer, there's three parts: hardware, software, and user. And the question raised by people that deal with this professionally is the hardware problem is not the problem. For example, in modern society, lots and lots and lots of, through modern life, just like this building. I mean, as we were approaching this building, Student Center North, this is a monster building with all kinds of stuff inside. It's lots of facility, lots of hardware improvements, and more comforts and conveniences than prior. But modern life has led to some negative emotions, big time negative emotions. We all know CDC from the pandemic, what those people are. So this is their chart, their statistics, and way back in 1968, out of 100,000 people, how many incidents of negative mental disorders, their data. And look at the chart, 2010, and moving up, it's on the rise. So it's an epidemic. Not a pandemic, but an epidemic. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the U.S. 40 million adults in the U.S., or nearly 18%, 20%, every year they have an attack of anxiety disorder. That's a big number, 1 in every 5 people per year. Or in the World Health Organization, 300 million people around the world have depression. And in China, they don't like to advertise their problems. But in the top companies, 50 of the top companies in 30 cities, nearly 80% of those surveyed showed agitation, then anxiety, 59%, and 38+% haunted by depression. So those are big numbers. The numbers keep going. Here's some more numbers. 16.2 million adults in the U.S. in the past 1 year, that many adults experience a major depressive episode. Those are the ones that are reported, like hospitalization. That's a lot. That's a big number. 15% of the adult population will, in some point in their life, have a major depressive episode. And adolescents are strong targets for this. 3.2 million adolescents in the United States, one major depressive episode in the course of their life is a teenager. The number represents 13% of the population, 19% girls. Girls do better in this score. And the cost for the U.S. per year, $210 billion. Now, that's some statistics. How does this get triggered? It's not because there's not sufficient hardware. But there's two other reasons that are given. Situations external to us, and then situations from within. That is, past impressions. Past impressions. Here's an example. The Sanskrit phrase is anta, means within, and karna means cause or causation. So here's a fellow, it's a hot summer day. At the end of the day, he's going to take a dive into a lake and get cooled off. And as he's standing there, something happens. Some past emotion gets triggered in him and he starts to panic. Now that past emotion that got triggered could be any number of things. Either in this lifetime, there was a near drowning experience, or in a previous lifetime there was a drowning experience, or something, and there's an emotion stored inside, and something outside triggers something that's inside. And I'll tell a little story. In my years as a high school student, one of the things that we did was we visited forts. Well, I remember specifically Fort Ticonderoga that oversees the Niagara River, and from a vantage point, the military could see armies coming by land and armies coming by sea, and it was a fort. And one of the facilities in the fort was they had a little prison. If they captured somebody, they put them in a little jail. So, like high school kids, we were curious. And I was curious amongst those kids. So I crawled inside this little, it was like a little cave. And then more kids, and more kids, and more kids. And somewhere along the way, I panicked. And it was claustrophobia took over. And my parasympathetic nervous system didn't ask for reasons. I just had to get out of there. I didn't scream, but I pushed, and they understood, get out of the way. This guy's lost it. And when I was outside, I was thinking, where'd that come from? And I had forgotten, but then that situation reminded me of something that happened from way back when I was a little boy. Once upon a time, I was a little boy. And my brother, I was the youngest of 5 children. And I had an older brother, who was the oldest one, 3 sisters, and I was the little one. So he told me that from the day that I was born and brought back from the hospital, we shared the same room, big brother, little brother. And, boys will be boys, so sometimes we would wrestle. And guess who won? My older brother always won. And one of the signs that the wrestling time was over was he'd put a pillow over my head. That was the sign, it's over. Stop wrestling. So I had forgotten all that. But then the memory came back, the claustrophobia memory of having a pillow over my head. And so here I was in this little Fort Ticonderoga prison, and I didn't have control of my emotion. It was like I had to get out, and I got out. So that's one of the causes, some past event that it doesn't have to be directly related to what you're doing. It triggers a stored, pent-up emotion, antakarana. And there you go. Parasympathetic nervous system takes over, and someone becomes angry, or someone feels lonely, or someone feels claustrophobia, or someone feels something. And life is like that. You know, we have a plan, like going back to that first slide, we have a plan, but it's never a straight line. There's always, you know, a new twist, a new turn, a new something, something, something. And life is just a little bit like that. So the people that analyze or try to help an individual that's caught in this negative emotion thing, they try to teach the principle of detachment from the mind. And one of the ways to do it is everyone has pictured a TV screen or a movie screen or a screen, your computer screen. It's just a screen. And then on the screen, there's some image. And then the image we relate to, we identify with, you know, the action movie or the romance movie or the, you know, disaster movie or the war movie or the whatever it is. What's going on the screen, and we identify with it and have some emotions connected to it. Common. And one of the principles of meditation is detach yourself from the activities of the mind. I'm going to share a little personal experience with this. When I was in undergraduate school, I went to school at upstate New York, State University of New York at Buffalo, and it was, you know, big place. And near Buffalo there was a Zen ashram, a Zendo. And so some of the people in the house that I lived, we shared living space, they were really into Zen. So we went to visit the ashram and learned Zen Buddhism, and we set up a little Zen room in our home. And Zen Buddhism worked like this, from first-hand experience. Early in the morning, I just heard the conversation, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning. We some of us got up really early and went to the Zendo and did Zazen. And the discipline is, you're looking at a blank wall, and while you're looking at the blank wall, that's like your mind, and then in the mind here comes a thought, and it's like a cloud in the sky. That's how the teaching goes, and you just observe it, because most people get involved in the thoughts in their mind and they identify with it and get some emotion connected to the thought that's in their mind. But the discipline is just let it go, and there goes the cloud across the sky, and sure enough, it disappears. And then here comes another cloud in the sky, and then to several clouds, and gets a little busy, and then, but you don't interact with it. It's just let it go. You can observe it, but it's not you. You're the observer, and then there's the mind, and the thought that's in the mind, and all of that business. And eventually, when you become proficient, it's a clear sky. Shanti, peace, where you're not caught up in stuff, the mind stuff. So that's a discipline that I found it was effective. However, my experience was, as soon as those 2 hours of Zazen meditation were over, the mind started getting cluttered up again. In other words, my subjective experience was, it's not a way to live. It's a discipline that helps keep the mind clear, but it's not a discipline that you live with. No, I suppose if one continued it, for some decades, it would become your way of life. But, it didn't take hold in my life anyway. I found other forms of meditation more effective and more natural and stayed with me. So, the inner screen is often not transparent with the outer reality. Circumstances can be disproportionate to or completely different from your emotional perception. Here's an example. This is the photograph of a lady that works at a 1-800 suicide hotline. So one phone call she received was a girl called the hotline number and said she was contemplating suicide because her boyfriend didn't respond to her phone call. And, the professional was empathic. So they, oh, really? What was that like? What were your feelings like? And she understood there's something behind it. So a little exploration, and those impressions that she was holding because her boyfriend didn't answer her phone call had to do with her childhood. In her childhood, she was from a broken home, and she felt abandoned and lonely, and that her boyfriend didn't answer her phone call triggered that emotion. And she was contemplating suicide because of it. So it's disproportionate to the event, but triggered by something that's within inside. So that's one of the causes. Here's another discussion exercise. Some of you like these. Has there been a time in the past where you have reacted to a situation that was either disproportionate or completely different from reality? Or someone else completely misread your interaction with them? What did you learn from that experience? I have an experience where I found out later, because I was told later, that something that I said or did, the intention behind it was some kindness to another person. And somehow they read it just the opposite. And I was like, what? And then the explanation. So it's probably happened to all of us. This is interaction time. I'm going to sit down again, and some of you came in a little bit late. You missed the first part, but you see what we're doing here? Find some proximate person, 2 or 3 or whatever number you like. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Break silence. Yeah, so this wasn't a social one, actually, though. A little different. I remember I was taking this really hard science for the summertime, and I left that first exam. I drove home thinking, I think I got 8 on it. I thought I was more. No, I think I got 70 on it. No, I think that's not wrong. I think I got 50 on it. Like, so I'm going 50 to 40, like 30. I got home and I was thinking to myself, I can drop this fast. I can believe the other thing, I can drop it, and I can delay my graduation based on this year. It's just gonna ruin my exam back. I was the highest grade in that class. I don't want to get anything high. And that's not ever since I that's what, and I always want myself that moment. I never worry about that being like, I want to get the right.
People think you're being
Yeah.
It's not reality. So What did you learn from that essay?
That someone was very quick to judge. Thought about
And I remember playing with it, like,
judge
yeah, like, I think more often than not, I think everyone. I think one thing that like I learned from whenever I do misjudge someone is that I should let people no matter what. Like, I think someone gives me hard feedback.
All that stress.
They don't like me. I always try to give them benefit of the doubt.
I also got that from a friend like yesterday, just now, and like, hey, what was early was actually, I feel like the joke was fun, but she told me that this day of class is just too. And you share from a friend, they, it was a decision for grade. And I'm just saying, and she just said, oh, I was there with.
or is it 5 weeks trying to figure out the 5 weeks?
That guy was, he never, but my prior accepted.
There's this example where you walk up to someone and you say like that, they don't respond. I learned this at the IT side.
I know that it's 21 here, 5 weeks.
So like the first thing you ignored it. I wonder, like, must have been because of I didn't respond to that. So this- I didn't respond to that. Maybe it's because I didn't. So you put it in. Yeah.
I really feel,
False assumptions.
I feel like I'm in shoes.
Reality, that person might have been busy.
That's what I have.
We automatically jump to decisions instead of looking at the
I have like our basic program. But looking at decisions. That's how.
Oh, actually, that's true. Wow.
Sometimes it's more like, let's say
Not very, very good.
There's no.
Oh, really? Never.
Well, they do a government.
Okay. Wrap it up. We're going to move on. One of the things about negative emotions is it often starts with really, really tiny feeling, and then what's called the snowball effect or the avalanche effect. So I learned about from visiting Alaska about avalanches. It's dangerous. How avalanches happen commonly is there's packed snow on a mountain, and then on top of the packed snow there's a little light snow. And then somewhere towards the top of the mountain, a little bit of light snow starts to fall down. And that little bit of light snow gathers other light snow down below it, and before you know it, there's an avalanche. It starts with a little something at the top. So negative emotions work like that sometimes, called the avalanche effect. It's discussed in Bhagavad Gita. It goes like this. From a thought, by contemplating the object of the senses, is chapter 5, Bhagavad Gita. One develops an attachment. And from that attachment, some emotion, then maybe some obsession, like I got to get rid of this thing, or I got to get some of those things. And then it can lead to a destructive action. So it all starts with the contemplation thing. So Same as the earlier message. There's a mirror, and you look in the mirror, you see a reflection of the mirror. And making a distinction between the mind and what's going on in the mind and the observer, the self. So a major part of overcoming negative emotions is self-realization. Self-realization is identifying with the conscious entity within, not the covering or the reflection of what's going on inside. Another principle, this requires intelligence, because intelligence can direct the mind. So supposing there's a negative emotion, and you perceive you're detached enough, you can see here comes this negative emotion. Is it possible? The answer is yes. It's possible to give a direction to that negative emotion that's healthy instead of detrimental. Like this example of Dorothy Rowe holding the key that keeps yourself in prison, or the key that gets yourself out of prison. With proper intelligence, you can direct the activities of the mind. However, this is a Bhagavad Gita verse, the senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind. Even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. So sometimes it happens like that. Therefore, the solution is purity. Whoop. A teenager did this for me, including the sound, but you can control the sound. So this is a set of gates, kind of like an altar, and then it's meant to indicate the physical, the mental, the heart, and then the self in sequence. So that the doors are going to, if it works, the doors are going to open sequentially. So directing consciousness from the physical plane, then to the more subtle, the mind, and enter into that realm, into the heart, the deeper emotion, and eventually deep in within the heart is the nature of the self. So the whole process of yoga and meditation is to strengthen self-realization, and through that self-realization there can be detachment from those other coverings, body, mind, and the heart. It's the path to purity, and it comes from practice and discipline. Yesterday evening there was a student who was speaking more about liking silent meditation, and I discussed like the Zen silent meditation experience that I had, and it's powerful and it's limited, both. But there's sound meditation. Here's a little example. Simply giving oral reception to Vedic sounds. The feeling for loving devotional service sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. And if one is engaged in a practice manner by hearing transcendental sounds or Vedic sounds, then that vibration becomes the feeling that you carry with you at all times. Here's a little experiment. I'm going to try to end quickly. This is a fellow. Look at the wall around him. There's photographs of patterns, geometric patterns that come from sound, or sound has form. So he's going to sprinkle some powder on this table and then vibrate the table in different ways. And I hope this sound works. So by vibrating the table, the powder starts bouncing around and forms a geometric pattern according to the pitch of the sound. Then he's going to change the instrument and it's going to make a different vibration. Sound has form is the message. That's probably not what one would expect, but that's what happens. Now, a third, he's going to use a different example. There's a whole field of science of sound called cymatics. And one of the earliest experimenters with this was Dr. Hans Jenny in Switzerland. And this is an image showing when he had a little device, something that generates a sound, something that directs a sound, and a medium that receives the sound. So on the right-hand side is what the image that he took, directing the sound Om onto this vibrating medium. And this Om sound configuration on the right side is very similar to, almost identical with, the mandala, or a geometric pattern that depicts the sound of Om. Here's the full picture of the sound Om. Here's the image from his machine. And sound, of spiritual sound, this is an image, a two-dimensional picture of what the sound of Om looks like. And then the sound of Om, when it's vibrated, not only a vibrating surface, but it has an impact on consciousness. So when I came in, there was this chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and that's another type of mantra meditation through sound, bringing one's consciousness to the Supreme. Two other little points. There are many, many, many studies that have been done. One of those studies is what this neurologist calls the Sanskrit effect. And he studied different people, particularly young people that were trained from childhood to recite Sanskrit. And the short of it is, by that regular, just giving oral reception to the sounds of Sanskrit letters and words, the capacity to remember increased dramatically, like triple. The long passages, just by hearing them once, the impression was there, you do well in your exams. I heard some discussion here about some exams. So, Sanskrit effect, and many other abundant studies, the effects, particularly the effects of mantra meditation. So the conclusion here is advocation of mantra meditation, and it's an essential part of what this club does, teaches how to engage in mantra meditation along with Bhagavad Gita and other texts, and bring one to the place of higher consciousness, the place where we belong. That's it. Now, I don't want to go over time. I don't know who's the timekeeper? Do we have time for discussion? Okay, a few. Any comments or questions that you'd like to bring up? Yeah.
So you mentioned about like maintaining calm and trying to find peace. So I'm wondering, is there anything I could do like day-to-day life, something like small or anything I could do like once a day or twice a day or whatever,
Sure.
so I could like try and maintain calm?
Three things. Your food choices. So it's connecting the tongue. Select foods that are elevation of consciousness types of foods, mode of goodness foods. And from Bhagavad Gita, you learn what they are. Kind of common sense, but you leave out intoxicating things, you leave out violent things, and then take other things that are lead to higher consciousness. Food choices, that's the tongue, and then another tongue function is vibration. So, per your question, just take whatever the time is that you feel that you can, and engage yourself in mantra meditation. That mantra I showed, and you here it is here. When I came in, this was on the screen. So you all know what that one is. So it's effective. And some part of each day, as your discussion was going, early in the morning is best. Why early in the morning? There's less distraction. It's mode of goodness hours before it gets really busy. That's the passionate hours. And late at night is the mode of ignorance hours. So the mode of goodness hours, early morning, ideal. Some kind of a sadhana or discipline that brings your auditory capacity to spiritual sound. And just hearing that spiritual sound on a regular basis, however much time you want to commit to that, you do that. So those two things, food choices, mode of goodness foods, stay away from the other ones, and vibration of spiritual sounds, mantra sounds. Bhagavad Gita helps a lot too, because it gives direction, or like intelligence, like, whether to turn left or turn right in different circumstances of life. Anyone else? It's a good question. I like your question. Okay. I guess you're ready, you're hungry or something. What's next? Who is our MC? Here you go.
Thank you so much for speaking today. I'd like to again thank everyone for coming. I know we have gone past our normal schedule, but it was mentioned that we would go till 7:30. So thank you guys so much.